Hi, it's Robin. So yesterday I went to go see Project Hail Mary at the IMAX, which was pretty cool. And I wanted to give my thoughts because there's a lot of things I liked about it and some things that I didn't like about it. So I'm going to try to split this video into spoiler-free half and then spoilers half so that, if you haven't seen the movie yet, you can still get an idea of whether or not you want to go watch it. And then if you have seen the movie, you can kind of understand, you can get more of an in-depth review of what I think about some of the plot elements. The first thing that I immediately noticed was the cinematography. I think the cinematography was really great. I might still be a little Oscar brained, but I think it honestly is a really good contender already for best cinematography. It was really interesting. It was similar to One Battle After Another in the case of being messy, but being a controlled mess, which I really liked. And I think it worked well with the concept of the film because essentially it's about the sun is dying and they have to figure out a way to stop it within the first 30 years or within the next 30 years so that, before the crops start dying, people go crazy and starve to death. So I think in the sense of being a movie about space and going into space, it's really interesting because they use the spatial position of the camera to hone in on that feeling of being in space, of zero gravity. So even from the beginning, even in the moments where there is no zero gravity, there might be like a flashback in space, they're still doing shots from above or from behind or sideways, or Ryan Gosling's character, Dr. Grace, is shown upside down, but he's like right side up, but the camera is upside down. So I think it really worked with what the film was about. I think it was super interesting. I think the compositions were great. There was a lot of overlaying too, so there was depth not in just flipping the camera upside down, but there was movement in terms of showing that there's depth like behind and in front of the character. So there's a lot of overlaying. Sometimes a projector screen would be covering Dr. Grace's face, or there'd be lights or an object on top of his face, not on top, but like in front of his face. There'd be objects behind him, shadows, very similar to like Kurosawa. There would be a lot of very similar to Kurosawa. There would be a lot of shadows overlaying the face, different lighting. There's one scene where there's just microphones in a room, and there's bokeh that's created from the microphones, and it's kind of cascading outwards over Dr. Grace's face, but it doesn't really take away from him being the primary focus of the shot. So it was very, very smart in terms of recognizing that, hey, usually humans, we are walking not on 2D, but like relatively 2D, right? We can't fly around, but then in space you can fly around. So we need to show that with the camera movement as well. We shouldn't, lock ourselves to only being able to do like a pan or something like that. So that was really cool. A lot of barrel rolls, a lot of circular, composition, not circular compositions, but a lot of like framing with circles was pretty cool, which works because, there's a lot of concepts of like centripetal force, and the earth is a circle, not a circle, but like the earth is a sphere and it looks like a circle when you're looking at it. So stuff like that was really cool and it worked. There was definitely some homages, or like an homage to 2001 Space Odyssey, but they weren't going over the top with the lighting. It was like they're very smart with the lighting. So it wasn't just, let's do complementary colors. It was sometimes as simple as, hey, we'll have cool lighting here, but then warm lighting in this area to add that contrast, instead of just having like, it wasn't just like, oh, let's do pink and purple lighting. It was, let's do cool lighting and a warm lighting, but not as strong as just orange and blue. It was just a very subtle warm lighting to light this area, and cool lighting to light that area. So also very cool way of adding depth to a shot, and showing that separateness, but still being a cohesive composition. I also really liked that the lighting was not traditional. The lighting was not traditional in the same way that One Battle After Another's lighting wasn't traditional. So some shots were overexposed, some shots were underexposed. I liked that there was a lot of backlighting. You could see where the source of the lighting was coming from. Like there was a lot of backlighting, which I thought was really cool. There was maybe a bit too many lens flares for me personally. I kind of get it because, like, when you're looking at the sun, when you're trying to take a picture of the sun, it's gonna flare. but there was a little too many, I think. Like, we kind of get it, like, we're in space, there's gonna be lens flares, but after a certain point, I think it got a bit too much. But in general, the cinematography was really great. Let me know what you think about it, because I loved it, and honestly, it might have been better than One Battle After Another's cinematography. The editing was also great. I liked it a lot. It reminded me a lot of A Man with a Movie Camera in terms of, again, movement, lots of movement. So maybe you know, the movement of this spaceship kind of match cuts to the movement of something in a flashback, and a lot of movements, a lot of match cuts with the composition of where Dr. Grace is in the shot, matching to the flashback. I think the montages were great. It really helped with the pacing, especially since it's a book. I think that's, you know, it's hard to kind of keep what you need to from the book in order to keep that context while not being super boring and long. There's a lot of times where things were revealed through editing, a lot of show don't tell, which I definitely appreciate. You know, they would ask a question and then the next shot they would show the answer without saying it, or they'd cut off, you know, Dr. Grace's sentence and then answer it with a flashback, stuff like that, where a lot of things were revealed through the editing. I also think the editing helped with the comedy a lot. I think, speaking of comedy, I think Ryan Gosling was like the perfect casting for this. It was kind of a mix. He had a lot of the same doofus behavior as Ken from Barbie, but he was also smart. And Dr. Grace was a cutie patootie. That's all I have to say. Dr. Grace was a cutie patootie. But yeah, Ryan Gosling was perfect. He had the range of being funny, but also having that emotional side as well. One thing that I would say is that I wish that they lingered on the emotional beats longer instead of going straight to comedy, because that's one thing that I do not like about the MCU, is that the emotional moments are undercut by jokes, and it's like, can we just linger on the emotion for a little bit longer so that I can feel it? And same with the editing too. It's like the way that they would cut back at some points, I'd be like, okay, well, I didn't even get the chance to kind of sit in that emotion and feel it before you know, cut to a different shot. But other than that, I think it was pretty good. I think the montages got a little bit heavy-handed at the end. It was kind of like, hey, we need to fit all this in here, we don't know what to do, so let's just like put five sequential montages, which I think made the pacing a little lackluster at the end, and it felt redundant, right? And the shots felt redundant after a while. It wasn't as interesting. But overall, I think it was a really interesting movie. I liked it. I really want to read the book to see if the pacing is the same issue in the book. I know there's some things about the plot that, you know, you being an adapted screenplay, you can't really stray that far away from the plot in some instances. So I think, given the constraints, they added a lot of interesting stylistic choices to the movie itself, and I'm curious to see what the book does instead. And I heard that the book is really good, so definitely want to be checking that out soon. So now we can get into spoilers. This movie is about astrophages eating the sun, or using the sun's energy to propel themselves, and Ryan Gosling has to go into space and he meets Rocky, a super cute rock alien. Yeah, again, I feel like once Rocky was introduced, the tension kind of fell, because before you're like, okay, how is he going to save Earth? He's alone, he has nothing, he doesn't know what he's doing, how is he going to save Earth? But then once Rocky kind of came into it, it did turn into a kind of, you know, bromance type of comedy film, and I think the tension it kind of went away, because at that point it followed very common plot elements, like, oh my god, are they gonna make it? Oh, of course they're gonna make it. Oh, they're gonna save each other, like stuff like that. It was very like, okay, we know it was predictable at that point. But I think I really like that, again, with the editing, that the flashbacks added more tension, because there were still questions that the audience had, like, how did Dr. Grace end up in that position? Like, he was just a scientist, and there was particular astronauts that were dedicated to go on the trip, but why is he on this trip? And there's still questions that the audience was asking, and I thought it was cool that the flashbacks were able to still add that tension back to it that was gone from earlier parts, which is again why I want to read the book, because I'm wondering, does the book have the same layout of flashbacks, or was that a director's choice? Because that would be pretty cool if it was. And in terms of the flashbacks, I think it was really cool that Dr. Grace wasn't brave. I think that was interesting because typically in these types of space movies, you know, these people are officers or astronauts that, you know, chose to be on this, or, you know, they have that final survivor type of space movies always have a super brave, strong character. But I like that Dr. Grace was not brave, and that was revealed, but it was revealed after we kind of got to know him. So it added a bit of cognitive dissonance, I guess, where you're like, okay, well, he's handling this, but I'm seeing that he did not even want to be in this position. So that was pretty cool. I like the tension from the like explosion, you know, cutting back to the explosion and him, you know, them realizing like, hey, like Dr. Grace has to go on this trip. I like the tension that they added from showing him being forced to go on the trip, that he didn't want to go on it. And we're thinking, okay, well, we're still at that point thinking maybe he got the bravery, but no, he didn't. He was forced to go on it. He was literally kidnapped to go on this trip, basically. So I think that added a bit of, it switched things up, which kept the movie interesting. And I also like that at that point the audience likes Dr. Grace, but then you're realizing like this man is so cowardly, which I don't want to say because I get it in a sense, but this man is so cowardly that he doesn't even want to go to space for all of humanity. Like, you're gonna die anyways, you're gonna die with everyone, so you might as well die for humanity. But that didn't even convince him. And so at that point as an audience member, you're like, oh, I like him, but also like that's kind of messed up. But I like at the end that he does sacrifice himself for both Rocky and humanity. And at that point, I think it might have been a little heavy-handed how many times they were calling him brave, because we get it, like he wasn't brave and now he is. They could have done without Rocky saying he was brave. Like I thought it was really cool that Rocky was like, oh, what's the word for like when you do something in a self-sacrificial way? And Dr. Grace is like, oh, being dumb. And then he types brave in the translator. That was a really cool way of editing that, of showing and not telling. But then they just go on later to Rocky saying like, oh, you're so brave. And it's like, okay, we get it. Like, you didn't have to shove that message more down our throat. But overall, I do like that aspect of his character. I also noticed a lot throughout the movie that Dr. Grace was wearing clothes that were a lot brighter than the rest of the characters in the film, especially, I forget her name, but the woman from Anatomy of the Fall. The woman from that movie, she was wearing a lot of black, and compared to Dr. Grace, who was wearing like yellow and stuff. And I think, from my interpretation, I feel like they were trying to show that like he is the guiding light, the North Star for humanity. Like he's the one that's going to save humanity, which kind of makes sense because at the end, we don't really know. We know that the stuff that the Tau'Amoeba get to Earth, but we don't know if that actually ends up being successful. But I think the fact that he was in brighter colors compared to all the other characters was to show like, hey, he is the savior to humanity. I also forgot to go into the colors. I like that, and similar to what I call it multiversal colors. So like the pinks and the yellows and the greens and the blues, that shows up a lot in space movies or movies about time, or even like Across the Spider-Verse. There's a lot of those bright flashy colors, and I like that this movie, it was kind of those colors but muted a bit, and they didn't go full into like, you know, 2001's Space Odyssey, you know, multiversal colors all over his face and stuff. It was very, I don't even know how to describe it. Like the colors fit with each other. It felt natural. And so instead of being like multiversal, where it's like, hey, we're in space, it's flashy, it was like, hey, we're in space, but for Earth. So it was more earthy reds and earthy greens and yellows, which I think was pretty cool play on that very common thing that you see in these types of sci-fi movies. I think the end, it was a little cheesy with him teaching the Rock kids, the Iridian children. I still don't understand how he knows their language and how he speaks to them, but it's okay. It's fine. It's a movie, and I think the concepts are cool. I love the characters. I love the guy from, I forgot his name, the bear. He was fun as well. Like the dynamics between the characters. I like that there was, I don't know if you would call it a romance between Dr. Grace and the woman from Anatomy of a Fall, because it wasn't a romance. Like they kind of hinted at it, but it was more like an admiration, like a a mutual respect because we're both humans trying to survive, which I think is similar to him and Rocky's relationship as well. Just like, especially because Dr. Grace didn't have someone back home that he wanted to save. He didn't have kids. He was dispensable. Is that the word? He was dispensable, replaceable, but he still had that love for just another being suffering, which I think is a really cool message that you don't need to have like, hey, I need to save my kids, I need to save my wife, my mate. You just have to have the respect of another living thing, and that's enough to make you brave. I also like that they took a more astrobiology perspective, because I feel like well, of course, like Alien kind of does it, but it still is in a sci-fi horror type of way. And I like that this is more of an existential horror. It's not like, oh, these things are literally eating us, but like, hey, we have an imbalance in the ecology of our solar system, in our universe. And so we need to put things back into balance, which is, I guess, it was an interesting take on this kind of sci-fi genre, and of course super cool to me because I like biology and I like engineering. So it was cool that it wasn't just like all space or all time or all like horror. It felt more grounded in that area. You know, I love that word, grounded. Felt more grounded. So yeah, I also like the aspects of kind of humbling humanity, both in the sense of the astrophages being because they're not even a direct predator to the humans, but they're affecting the humans. So that was interesting. But I also like the showing the humility of humanity by showing that Rocky is super smart, and his kind, the Iridians, are very intelligent as well, and that we're not the only intelligent beings in this universe, and we're also not invincible, but that we're just part of a bigger web. And I think that's a really cool take on environmental activism, I guess, and showing that humans are just one species in a big chain of other species. Oh, and of course, it's from my tried and trues. It was directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, and words cannot explain how much love I have for those two people. They created the most important thing in my life, Across the Spider-Verse. So I am glad that they made another good movie, and I have full faith in them. This movie gave me full faith in them that they will successfully complete Beyond the Spider-Verse. Fingers crossed. Okay, I'm talking too much. See ya. Oh, and also, I got this cool Amaze pen from the IMAX for free, so that was fun too.